All right, I guess we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Judge Wagner sends her apologies, but she's traveling today. So I guess it'll fall to me to kind of ringlead through here. Um, Wanted to kind of just start off based on my curiosity and with the primary election now a week behind us and some of the dust settling. Uh, did anybody hear anything? Was there any concerns that folks heard about participating in the primary election that we need to be thinking about, particularly when it comes to counting votes, but more broadly that I can pass on to the steering committee?
I didn't see any. I worked the polls, and some people ran out to get their driver's license, but that was about it. I
Okay.
didn't hear any complaints.
Okay.
I was going to say the same thing. I worked the polls that day, and most people seem to be very much in agreement with the ID. And we didn't have anyone complain or not be able to vote because they didn't have it or didn't have appropriate ID. So I thought that was a really good takeaway, regardless of party affiliation or people's opinions about that. They seem to have been willing to either go to the Board of Elections or DMV or wherever if they didn't already have an ID, but they all certainly brought what they needed to bring with them.
Okay.
So that seemed I was expecting a little bit of pushback, but we didn't get it. So
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I didn't hear any complaints. I actually went and watched them count votes just to kind of see how it happened and kind of watch how they dealt with the new rule of they couldn't start counting the early voting and see kind of how that worse, not a huge city or Burke County. So and it didn't seem to be a huge problem. They were certainly talking about, how it was going to take longer and all of that, but I didn't hear any complaints either. Everything seemed fine.
That was going to be my kind of second follow-up was, did anybody experience any delays or beyond what we were expecting? I think all of us were kind of watching this and expecting maybe an hour, hour and a half delay time in terms of the actual reporting. But on election night, I was traveling from about 7 to 8:30 to get to a studio, and when I got in and started logging on to the elections results website, it seemed like it was just it was later, but it didn't seem like there were many hiccups or issues coming out. Anybody else have any experience? Okay. All right. Well, maybe the word got out, and I know the press really hit that issue pretty hard the week leading up to the primary election. So fingers crossed, maybe that was not as much of an issue as we thought, or things just kind of went smoother than expected on that.
Michael, do you
Yeah.
know why they made that change? I did hear the people on the Board of Elections kind of questioning why that change took place. Do you have any insights into that? I think we've talked about it. Nobody really seems to know.
So the only understanding that I have is that within this pretty massive piece of legislation, it was, I think, over 65 pages or so, it just got stuck in there by we're not sure who in terms of that. But it was something that got noticed at the time, but then really didn't get the follow up until some of us started talking about it and making it aware, and some of the media also picked up on it. Um, I, with I have not heard any major issues come out of it. So I don't know if there will be a revisitation by it in the short session over it, or if it just went fairly smoothly. Um, privately, I was told that it was inserted to try and dampen the wild swing that oftentimes occur. We know that early votes tend to trend towards one party, and then election day votes tend to trend to another. And it was there may have been a concern about trying to dampen that pretty significant swing from early reporting results to later reporting results. I don't know anything more beyond that, to be quite honest and candid with you.
Thank you.
Sure, sure. All right. Um, I know I sent out I was reading the minute notes, meeting notes from last time, and particularly on the voter signature verification process. As I kind of indicated, and I should have sent out the web link, and I'll do that in a follow-up email to y'all from the State Board of Elections website. But I think that May report will be something that we will want to carefully look at and consider, and certainly, perhaps include in our final report. Did anybody hear any, and I know that the dust is still settling and they're doing canvassing for the primary election here, and the 10 counties were doing their processing of the pilot project. Anybody hear any concerns or issues related to potential voter signature on absentee by mail ballots? Seems to be good. Okay. All right. We'll see how that kind of plays out. And then I think the other thing, most notably for this committee, but also the committee I'm serving on as the other committee, the mail-in ballots, we will have some track record, I think, of the mail-in ballots that came after the polls closed on last Tuesday, and what kind of, dynamics, what kind of demographic information we can kind of read out of that. My suspicion is that potentially voters may be aware of some of these changes and are changing their behavior accordingly. There may be some that didn't know and their votes just didn't get counted afterwards, thinking that they still had the 3-day grace period for the counting of absentee by mail ballots coming in. But I will be able to get that data from the State Board of Elections. I would think they would include that, but just not acknowledge the acceptance of those mail-in ballots. So we'll have that as something that we can potentially include into our report as well as a preliminary finding. So, all right. Any other general observations in terms of what happened last Tuesday that folks heard of? Scott, anything that you heard through the grapevine or?
No, I actually, all the reports I saw was it was a typical smooth election, and that the voters, as usual, take things in stride.
Great. Excellent. All right. Omar, anything from your neck of the woods?
Nothing, just an email, but a very isolated issue, nothing to do with elections at all, just basically complaints, that's all.
Okay. Okay. All right. Brandon, anything from your end?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be with all of you. So I voted, my early voting place is at my law school alma mater, which is North Carolina Central University School of Law. It's in East Durham. And so it's in a pretty much a primarily African-American corner of Durham, the historic Black community. and a lot of them vote there. Everything seemed to be very smooth. I have not heard. So, just for background, I am currently the president of the Durham County Bar Association, and one of my fellow board members is Dawn Baxton, who is the chief public defender of Durham County, and she also happens to be the chair of the Durham County Board of Elections. And so, in speaking with Dawn, everything seemed to have gone well. And I do not know of any controversy in terms of implementation of the voter ID, even though that was very controversial politically with the populace of Durham County. So, all good things as far as I know in Durham.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yes, thank you. Okay, fantastic. Just kind of looking back through the action items from last time in terms of the signature matching laws and how that's being implemented, what potential issues. I think once we get that report from the 10 counties, and then I don't know what kind of data the State Board of Elections will have in terms of issues if they're tracking that kind of information. But I think certainly we can work on that aspect when it comes to the counting of ballots dynamic. The issue about unaffiliated voters treated in the electoral process. I was curious as to what, and I have not had a chance to listen to the last meeting, so maybe y'all went into depth. But could somebody share some views about what was discussed last time, and particularly related to unaffiliated voters versus those who are registered with one of the parties?
I think we were talking about, I mean, a piece of it at least was the fact that unaffiliated voters cannot be um, observers at the Board of Education.
Okay.
That kind of leaves them out of the process. That was one part of it. I don't remember if we had other pieces that we were talking about.
And particularly also serving on the Board of Elections.
Yeah,
Well, okay.
sort of, feeling a little disenfranchised from the ability to really get more involved if you're an unaffiliated voter.
Okay.
Which it would almost feel like it would take some of the emotion out of it if you could have unaffiliated, maybe not, but I think some people are very intentional about being unaffiliated voters, and would really, it might be easier to recruit people to do those jobs if unaffiliated were allowed to participate.
Which you also triggered a reminder in my brain just now. I don't know if folks heard the news yesterday, but a 3-judge panel was reviewing the revisions to the boards of elections, and they struck that legislation down. I can send out more information about that, but that's going to be a continuing legal battle, I think, over the next couple of months in regards to the structure. While this committee may not necessarily have any control over that aspect, it is something that is in the news, and will probably be continued legal fights over that piece of legislation.
What did they strike down in particular?
They said that the revisions was to create an evenly divided boards, both at the state level and at the county level. So right now it's typically a 3-2. The governor's party has 3 seats. The opposition party has 2. They had created it to be an even number. I believe it was 4, with an even match between the 2. And the general gist from what I read just briefly in their order was that it was an issue regarding the separation of power between the legislature and the executive branch, that basically the legislature had overstepped into the executive branch's authority, and they perceived the boards of elections as being members of the executive board, therefore being more accountable to the chief executive and not being as overseen by the legislature in terms of the appointment powers. Yes, Scott.
So I've been following this case, I won't say pretty closely, but enough to know what the major arguments are. And I believe the portion that was struck down was the change in the appointment authority of the board members from the governor to the legislature. And that was the separation of powers issue that was struck down.
Yeah.
As I read an article about it, a summary this morning, and that's what I recall.
Yep. I just briefly looked at, I saw the news alert and in the chaos of yesterday teaching and everything, just briefly looked at it. But yeah, that issue of who's got the authority to appoint, I think that's where that's playing into with that major piece. So, all right. And right now, unaffiliated voters have no role in terms of serving on county board of elections.
So Mike, sorry to
yeah.
make it repeat, remind me right now, who exactly appoints every county board of elections right now?
So right now it is based on the recommendations from, I believe, county political parties and ultimately state boards. The state board makes the appointments, but the governor makes the appointments to the state board. I need to do a little more specific research in that, but that's my understanding at this point. And I could be incorrect on that. So I will follow up with everybody.
Oh, no, it's okay. Thank you. But the governor appoints the state board of election, all those members, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you're guessing that the county officials, say the county commissioners, appoint, recommend to the board of elections? No.
No, I
No.
think it comes from the county political party that does
gotcha.
the recommendations for those folks. So there's no county commissioners. It is the political parties themselves that those recommendations, and then I think, I could be wrong on this, but I think most of the time those recommendations are just rubber stamped for the appointment power in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously that's all submitted. When I was chair of our party, we submitted names to the state board of elections. But again, to Michael's point, we recommend them 1, 2, 3. And the 3 seats are for the party of the governor and 2 seats for the other party. So it's still the 3-2 with the governor's party having the majority, and then each party submits those names.
All right. Okay. The point about continued emphasis on educating voters, particularly unaffiliated voters, I think that will be a major component of what we're working with. We do have, and Rachel may need to correct me on this, but I believe we have gotten a scheduled time with Karen Brunson Bell.
So we have kind of like a tentative time. I believe it's going to be March 27th. I believe at 11:30. We're just verifying because we gave her the 27th and 28th. And so we're waiting to hear back from her. But I think we're planning for the 27th. And we'll be sending out a notice.
Okay. And that's open to everybody on the commission, right?
Yes. Yeah. And we're going to have, when I send out the notice, we're going to have it so people have the opportunity to submit questions to us that we can then give to Karen.
Right. Yeah, that'll be a good wrap up of the primary election and what they've discovered, what they're finding in terms of, because most of the counties will have done their canvassing. And I think the state will, around that time or slightly thereafter, be finalizing and certifying the primary election results. They're also planning for the whatever runoffs are planned as well in that regard. Okay. Any further questions or issues folks have thought about? And I know I need to get on the stick and get some information out to y'all about data and what we know about the counting ballots process. But any general questions from folks? And again, I haven't gotten any kind of marching orders from Judge Wagner, so this may be perhaps your shortest meeting of the day.
Can I raise an informational point?
Certainly, please.
So yesterday, March 12th, there was, let's see, an 2.5 hour hearing on my favorite U.S. Senate committee, the Judiciary Committee. And I like to go through all of those on YouTube when I get a chance. Senator Durbin and Lindsey Graham hosted a committee talking about voter ID laws and the implementation of, or the possible enactment of, John Lewis's voting rights, the last bill that he wrote before he died of pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. If you have the chance, I think it would be good for this committee to watch as much of that as we can and possibly weave that into some of our discussions. I don't know if it will pass, and I'm not sure how much bipartisan support it has on the Senate Judiciary Committee, but that happened yesterday. I'm about 20 minutes into it. I'm going to finish it this evening, so I just wanted to put that out there in case anyone wants to watch that.
Okay. Great. And if you've got a link for it on YouTube, if you wouldn't mind circulating it to the group, that would be great.
I'll put it in the chat in about 15 seconds.
Okay. Excellent. Greatly appreciate it. All right. Anything else that folks want to raise in terms of issues, concerns, or other topics that we might want to consider?
Real quick, I'm sorry. Thank you, Michael. I connected with the legislative liaison of Centro Hispano, which is basically the largest and oldest nonprofit organization that serves Hispanics in North Carolina. He would like to be part of, this series of meetings. Is that something that can be possible, or how can I handle this?
Are they wanting a representative on the commission, or talk to me a little bit about what they're?
He just wants to, be part of, be part of these meetings, or, he wants to know more. He wants to, basically, his approach is education. He wants more information, learn more, and all the stuff.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to email me and him and do a kind of email invitation, I'm certainly happy to get him engaged with particularly the steering committee. We know we're going to need, all the friends that we can get and allies in terms of getting information out there, educating the public. So certainly we would welcome, his cooperation and his assistance and his group's efforts on our behalf, and can certainly put him into touch with the rest of the steering committee and see what we can do to join forces.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. Anything else from folks? All right. I will I'll update Judge Wagner. I think I will see her Monday evening of next week. But just give her an update as to what all we kind of discussed here and talked about, and give her some meeting notes that I've got here included. But if nobody else has got anything else of pressing concern, we can certainly sign off and go about
I
our
have one
business.
question.
Yeah. Julie.
What's the opportunity to get hear from the other committees? How do we get information just on what they've been doing, and if there's any findings or anything that they're working on?
That's a great question. I'll be candid. I don't think the steering committee has really thought about that, unless Rachel, you've got some insight as to communications, but I haven't heard of us, kind of interacting with other groups at this point.
Yeah, I'll say that that seems to be a recurring theme from each committee is that they want to collaborate with other
Okay.
committees, especially I would say almost 10 of the committees in total want to work with the Civic Education Committee. So it seems like there's a lot of demand to work with them. We don't really have anything in place for kind of streamlining that interaction. I imagine we can bring that up on our call on Friday when we meet with the steering committee.
Yes.
I will say you all should have access to the Google Drive, which you'll be able to see like all the notes from the meeting, all of the videos from the meetings. So you will be able to see kind of what they're working on. But we definitely need to kind of figure out how we can get these committees to collaborate with one another.
Well, one idea would just be to have maybe periodically a Zoom session where there's a representative from each committee who is on. Anybody from all the committees could join, but just go through and have a representative from each committee just give a quick update of what they're working on. And if there are any particular issues that have bubbled up, ours seems to be pretty straightforward. But maybe there's some other issues from other groups. And then that way offline people can collaborate if they feel like they have something to add or some interest.
Yeah,
That's an
that's a great
excellent idea. Yeah.
Just to keep it simple for you from an organizational standpoint. I know you don't need more organizing.
No, I think that, because certainly the topics that we're covering, there is potential overlap with, say, for example, the mail-in ballot. It's not just the process, it's what happens afterwards, but that's kind of more our domain. But certainly they would have some interest in that. And, by all accounts, the civic education component is going to be a critical component to all of this. Maybe with the steering committee is planning to meet Friday afternoon of this week. And I've got a note in my notes, and I know Rachel will have something in hers as well. We'll bring that up as an agenda item to where maybe we could have, because technically right now we're kind of halfway through our working period. If we're thinking about draft reports to be submitted in June for the July 15th full commission meeting, now would probably be a good time to kind of be halfway through that process and maybe just do a general update or status report on where all the committees are, so that folks kind of get a deeper understanding about the broad activities that are going on. Am I capturing what you're thinking about, Julie?
Yeah, that would be great. I think just a high level, summary of what's going on would be great. I don't want it to be too complicated for anybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great idea. All right. Excellent. Any others? Thoughts or anything? All right. Well, as we say in faculty meetings, hearing no objections, we will plan to adjourn accordingly, and we'll come back. I will work with Judge Wagner and get a further agenda for next month's meeting, which is
April 10th.
April 10th. So April 10th will be our next Zoom meeting for this committee, and we will plan to follow up, and we'll see what so that'll be after our session with Director Bell, and see what comes out of her meeting. Is that right? Yeah, 27th. And we'll see where that goes for this group as well. So, all right. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Rachel, anything to follow up with?
I will be following up with like the meeting, the recording, and the notes and everything.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
Thanks
you. Everybody.
Have
Good
a
to
good
see
one.
Bye.
Take care.